factoring a trinomial, there's more than one way to do it, so I just want to warn you of that. You might have learned it another way from a high school teacher or from a tutor, and they might call it the AC method, or I don't know, there's a bunch of methods that you can use. I actually learned this method from a student, and when the student showed it to me, I was like, huh. And I personally like to learn methods that works for easy and hard problems, so that I don't have to like think of, okay, if it's this case and I do this, if it's this case I do that. I just want one method, it's a one size fits all. And this method called Xbox is a one size fits all method that works with easy and hard problems. For the easy problems, it's probably easier to use something else, but for the hard problems, this is like a go-to. So I'd rather just use this one for the easy and the hard. So if you guys prefer using another method, do whatever floats your boat. I'm just going to teach you a method that works for me, and I've seen works for a lot of students that I've taught. And it works for easy problems like number 7, all the way to hard problems such as number 17 and 18, where you have crazier numbers and you have more than one variable. So I'm going to do that with this easy problem first. Let's try out number 7, and we're going to Xbox it. So first of all, how many terms? 3. Uno, dos, tres. Is there a GCF?
No.
No. So no GCF, so I don't have to pull anything out. Okay, so how Xboxing works is I look at the first term and the last term. The first term, I ask myself, what two items, what two factors multiply together to give me z squared? What multiplies to give me z squared? Z and z, right? Pretty easy. Two things that multiplies to give me z squared is z times z. There's only one option. What multiplies to gives me a 10? 5 times 2, so I write it down. What else multiplies to give me 10? 1 times 10, right? So it could be 1 and 10, or 5 and 2, or whatever else. So, but there's only so many options, right? It's either a 5 and a 2 or a 10 and a 1. So it's a finite number of options you can pick. It's not going to be like 20 of them. It's like a finite number. If 5 and 2 don't work, I'm going to try 10 and 1. So it's kind of like this game that you're playing. So here, the term Xbox, right? It's a game, right? Because Xbox is a game, and what we're doing is a game now. I'm going to draw an X, and what that X is that I'm going to cross multiply where I have the X. So I have Z multiplied by 2. What is Z multiplied by 2? 2Z, right? 2Z. And then Z multiplied by 5, which will give me 5Z. Now I'm going to, so you might be wondering, what's this middle term good for then? Well, this middle term is very important because it'll tell you whether you chose the right numbers or not. So I'm going to ask myself, can I add or subtract 2Z and 5Z to give me a negative 7Z? Is there any way I could create this to become a negative 7Z? What can I do?
I'll say
I'm sorry? Can I add or subtract this? Can I put any pluses or minus signs and combine them to create a negative 7Z?
Can you do negative 2z, negative 5z?
Great. You could do a negative 2z and a negative 5z. And when you add them together, what do you get? Negative 7z. So that gives me the middle number. However, I need to check something. If I'm putting a negative on these, I have to also put a negative on these, right? Because if you want to cross multiply, you better make sure that they have a negative on it, right? But then I need to ask myself, well, does negative 5 times a negative 2 give me a positive 10?
Yes.
And it does. So these numbers are my winner, winner, chicken dinner numbers, right? So in terms of the game, right, I win. These are the numbers that win the game. And I know this by cross multiplying, xing it, and then making sure that it can add or subtract to get me that middle term. And then the very last step is boxing it, right? After you X it, you're going to box it. And boxing is kind of like when you give someone a present, right? You draw a box, and then you draw another box. And this is how I kind of say, this is how you present your answer, right? You have these boxes. So when you want to factor this now, again, factoring is when you have a bunch of parentheses, right? So the first box is z minus 5. So I do it across, not diagonally. So be very careful. So go across. I guess in this case it wouldn't matter, but in other cases it will. You have z minus 5, and in the bottom box you have z minus 2. And that, my friends, is how you factor a trinomial. And let's check our work, right? Because if you're going to take a test and you get a grade on this, you better check your work to make sure it's right. Let's spoil it. What's z times e? Z squared. Z times negative 2? Negative 2z. Negative 5 times e. Negative 5z. And last but not least, negative 5 times negative 2. Positive 10. What can I combine? Okay, if you combine that, you get negative 7z. Okay, so you get z squared minus 7z plus 10. Holy smokers, that's exactly what we first started off with. Okay, everyone okay with this? Here, I'm going to exit. When I exit, when you cross multiply, what do we get? 14xy. And then this way, 4xy. Can I add or subtract that to give me a 1xy? No. So those numbers don't work. So what other numbers besides 2 and 7? 1 and 14, okay? So it could be, how about a y and a 14? 14y. So cross multiply, what do we get? 28xy. And then this way?
2xy.
Can I add or subtract that to give me a 1xy? So that doesn't work. So we've covered our bases. We did 2 and 7, 1 and 4, doesn't work. So something must not be wrong with this one, something must be wrong with this one. What other things can I multiply to give me 4x squared? I'm sorry, can you say it louder? Right, 4x and x. So 4x and x. So let's try it again. What were two numbers that multiplied to give me 14y squared? I'm sorry? 7 and 2. Cross multiply. And when you cross multiply, what do we get? 8xy. And then this way, 7xy. Can I add or subtract this to give me a 1xy?
Yeah.
I sure can. Where do I need my negative sign? On the negative 7. So 8xy minus 7xy does give me a positive 1xy, which is exactly what this is. So now, but I see I need to put a negative here, right? If I put a negative here on the negative 7, well, good thing there's a negative here, right? Negative 7y times 2y gives me negative 14y squared. I knew there was going to be a negative somewhere, I just didn't know where. So until I get to this part, oh, I see the negative had to be on the 7, not the 2, right? Because there's a negative 14y squared, one of them had to be negative. So these are my winner, winner, chicken dinner answers. So I'm going to box it. Go ahead and write down your final answer. So what do we get for our final answer? What does it look like? 4x minus 7y multiplied by dun, dun, dun. And again, if you multiply this through and checked your answer, you should get the original problem. So great, you guys did the hardest problem for a trinomial, right? So you could do this hardest one, you could do everything before that. So